Money, got any money? Mercy me, oh my, oh man, oh me. Can I get a few cents of that sweet money? Oh yeah. Oh no, don't give me that, you say. You don't wanna know a thing about money. You say you got enough in your hand. You say you're too good and cool. You wouldn't want a cent to be put down to pull you down to the deep unending sands of time would take you to make the dollar or dime when central banks are inflating everything beyond your chance of keeping. It's like smoke. By the time you're smiling, they're weeping. By the time you're weeping, they'll be smiling at the dining table made of gold and silver. Behold, real wealth in your hand. It's not ones or zeros or paper, understand. True wealth is in the heart of gold and in the real gold. And maybe it's not such a crime to want a little piece of the kingdom of man, though the real kingdom is upstairs. All right, that's called Kingdom Upstairs. We're going to talk about money. Money. All right. So, what got me thinking of this is in the last episode, I was like, quality over quantity. I don't need a bunch of stuff to be happy. I wouldn't want like an enormous amount of possessions, which is true. But also, like, I prefer quality possessions, like a few things of higher quality. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with, in my mind, with having a bunch of money, and I would like a bunch of money. Sure. I think it's kind of like money in that way is like power. It's not inherently bad. It's bad. A bad person, the more money they have, the worse the problem it is. A good person, the more money they have, the better it is. The less of a problem it is. You know. So they can give more. The more I have, the more I have to give. And so I think that's fine. And it'd be great if I had a home in Dublin. I have a home somewhere in the country, a little cottage. Oh, why not have a little pad in Amsterdam or something? Nothing wrong with all that. I think to be able to go around and experience the world and have homes or like be able to afford certain experiences. Like, I can go traveling more often, or I can go and you know pay for this health thing. There's some tea which is $100, but it's very good for you. Sure, I'll just go do it. That would be great. At the moment, my finances are more limited, so I can't do that. So I'm very wealthy compared to say most of the planet. I'm in the top. I think I'd be global 1% compared to I think if doesn't most people in the West would be in the global 1% of income. But so money can be kind of the gold coins on Mario or whatever, the opportunity points. I don't know if the Mario analogy is quite good, but that they open doors to you. Money opens doors to you. But the problem is you can get lost in it, right? So I'm going to today talk a bit about, I think, the balance between, money, like basically what's a balanced approach to money in your life, and the decisions we make in our lives because of money. And then collectively what money is doing in society. So yeah, okay. I guess just to get into the heart of it. So, what do you want? If you want a bunch of things, then, you want a new car, okay, then money can get you that thing. But if you actually want a feeling of peace and contentment, the car is not going to bring that. That's a separate thing. You can have the peace and contentment and have a new car and have a feeling of, oh, nice, new car, great. But, if you think the car can give you that feeling of fulfillment, you're wrong, right? And you're going to get disappointed because then I need a new thing now. I need a speedboat, or I need this or that. So just being clear on what you want and what you can get from things. Just observing, keeping your eyes open and understanding the way the world works and life works. So then I think, you want to be at peace and you want contentment. So accept the present moment and, awaken, develop your consciousness, start observing your mind, learn to distinguish between yourself and your mind. You'd be like, wait a minute, if I'm not what do you mean my mind, myself? Yeah, go figure it out. You're not your mind, and the mind generates all the problems. Mind is very useful, but it's a problem-solving machine. So if everything's fine, it doesn't go, everything's fine and perfect. No, the mind will be looking for problems to solve. And so you need to have a kind of high degree of awareness of what's going on in the moment and who you are, to be able to keep the mind on a leash, so to speak, and kind of, keep the mind. What they say, the mind is the perfect servant, but a lousy master. So I think that's true. So that'd be peace. Go check out episode 7, Awakening, if you want, more details about the process there. And then, from what I understand of it, right? But once you're clear on that, that's okay. But then, I want to go hear some classical music. I want to hear some Bach, at this, whatever, the Rudolphinium in Prague or whatever. Is that the name? Rudolphinium? Go to some concert hall and have this experience. That's an experience, and you need money for that, right? And it's, why should I have money? It should all be free. But wait a minute, it requires effort and energy. Are you going to do everything? I don't want to do everything. That sounds really tiring. I'm not going to do all the heavy lifting of the whole planet. I'm going to do my share, But so how do we organize to make sure everyone does everything? Well, that's where money comes in, and capitalism gets a bad name, but I think very misguidedly. And I've been there. I think almost everyone who praises capitalism properly has been, I think almost everyone has been in the point of criticizing it and thinking it was terrible, but not understanding that it's actually crony capitalism is what people should be angry at. And that's where people use money to basically buy political influence, and then they change the game. They rig the game, basically, by setting regulations and taxes and things and laws in ways which make it so they don't have to really compete. Corporations don't have to compete with small companies. That's when you get a problem. And it leads to oligarchy and the system we have today, where there's mass disenfranchisement and people wasting their time, where they have to slave away to get a little bit of money. And so a little bit of opportunity in life for slaving away, And eventually I think people are starting to realize the system is not fair. But the people who have the system intentionally built as not fair, because I think it's not all just accidental. A lot of it is intentional. There's certain billionaires who are like, we're so good at competing, we're going to not let you realize that we're actually competing with you by removing ourselves from competition through tax havens and a heavy tax burden for everyone else, for your own good. But we'll be in our tax havens and, whatever, slick, accounting firms and lawyers protecting us and making sure we don't pay our fair share. And so then there's an even playing field for people to to make money. That gives them more time, more opportunity at our expense. It's a parasitic relationship. So you have that, and that's what I think gives money a bad name to a large extent. People thinking, oh, these people who are just taking from everyone and being materialistic, consumeristic, they just care about consuming and getting, wealth and the status and looking good, and it's just kind of dumb, and that's fair enough, yeah. But I think the system itself of money is a beautiful thing. Let's say, so I'm going to take it on a simple. I kind of, I guess, might have covered a bit of this ground when talking about economics, in another episode, but previous one. But basically, in a nutshell, why do we need money? Well, it's a way of organizing. We have resources on the planet, and the question of economics is fundamentally how to get the things people want and need, how to get them from where they are to where they are wanted or needed. And so, if you try to do that through a central bureaucracy, it doesn't go very well. Communism, or even socialism, like the way we've got it now, it's heavily socialist all around the world, almost everywhere. There's a few places which are, that's complicated. I honestly need to study it more to understand the exact situation, but there's very few places which are, not socialist, meaning that where the government isn't interfering in the economy to a huge extent. And so they take a bunch of money through taxation, and they're basically saying, we will be able to direct this to a place where it would be better than if we left the money in the hands of the people and let it naturally go where it went, which I don't think is true. Their idea is like, it'll just sit in a bank account of some rich person. It's like, no, if it's in a bank account, then it's actually going to be reinvested, because they don't want it just sitting there. They want to make money. So they lend it out to people who have business ideas, problems that they want to solve. Oh, you've got a problem? You want something or you need something? Allow me to solve that for you, and then you're going to want to give me your money, right? So banks go, oh, that's a terrible business idea. No, ooh, that's a semi-reasonable one. Maybe they give 8 semi-reasonable proposals they will fund, and 2 solid gold. Definitely that's going to work. They'll fund or whatever. Maybe that's all it requires, where so long as most of them succeed, they make a bunch of money. This is what banks do. And traditionally, when there's, again, less crony capitalism, more just free market, you could start a bank. A bunch of people who have been working in the bank for 40 years, who at the moment have no prospects of, because they're not licking the boots of their managers or whatever, they can't get up, It wasn't so long ago that they would be able to go, well, we know how to run a bank, and we have, a certain amount of savings. So let's just get together, like 100 of us. We're going to start our own bank and, get some loans to begin it with or whatever, and, engage with the community, give a fairer deal where instead of these people who are just being parasites on the people, we actually give a good deal. We will be able to start spreading and gaining market share and providing banking services. People give us our money, every year we give them X percent, profit for savings, and because they're giving us this money, we can invest it and make money off it by, oh, there are these businesses. You want to start a business? Yeah, we'll fund that. And so it's good for the people, everyone, good for everyone, right? So banking is actually a beautiful thing done correctly, but just crony capitalism banking, where it's all politically connected and regulation says, oh no, if you want to start a bank, you've got to sign this 3,000-page form, and if you make one mistake, you're going to jail, and you need to pay this fee and that, and have all these people involved, and it takes forever, and you need to call people who don't call you back, and so these are some ways where the economy in a socialist economy, which is what we basically have almost everywhere, and crony capitalism is a type of socialism. Socialism not as defined in the traditional sense of the government taxing more in order to spend more. So the government being more involved in the economy. That's socialism. For the good of the people is the idea, but it doesn't usually work out that way, I think. But so this is so to go back a few tangents, right? So money gets a bad name because of crony capitalism, but in a benevolent system where it was like, okay, we have a certain amount of taxation we need for the government, right? But we kind of keep out of it. there's a lot of people can start businesses, it's normal people. And so you have this system where it's just problem solving, decentralized problem solving. And so money is this method by which people go, okay, I have money, I want to save it, I'll put it in the bank, and then they can lend it out to create new businesses, solving our problems, right? We need this healthcare problems. Okay, well, those two doctors at that hospital are kind of tired of working for this, big bureaucracy. They want to start their own thing. Okay, they go start a clinic. They don't need any permission. They just go do it. And if they hurt and if they don't do a good job, if they're being lazy, people don't go back to them. And soon they go bankrupt and they're gone. We don't have to worry about it. You don't need a health inspector on 100 grand a year or 50 grand a year or whatever from the taxpayers' money going around and, maybe abusing their power, shutting people down or whatever. Very simple. Just people don't want to use the service. They don't give them their money and they go bankrupt. Or they change and start doing a good job and then they get people's money. That's money. That's capitalism. It's very virtuous, it would seem, no? And if they really cause a problem, if they hurt someone or kill someone by intentionally or by negligence, like just not being careful enough, the law is, we already have all the laws we need for that, which is basically if you made, like, say, intentionally, if you try to hurt someone or kill someone, okay, of course that's murder or like assault and you're in trouble, right? You go to jail, right? If it's accidental, also negligence law, right, is that it's like tort law. Like if a reasonable person, the average person, would have been able to foresee that was going to cause a problem, going to hurt someone or kill someone. So even if you didn't foresee it, if the average person would have foreseen it, then you are treated like, sorry, it doesn't matter that you didn't realize. And maybe you're even lying about that, but let's just presume you really didn't realize what you're doing. Sorry, there's standards in society and there's consequences for that. So, it's as if you knew, basically. Okay, so that's the law. So these two doctors go and start a clinic. They do their thing. Perfect. They're providing medical care to everyone. And the customer's always right. If they're being like, oh, yeah, doing a bad job, I don't know, like there's good and bad people everywhere. I've had certain experiences with a doctor where I go pay a huge amount of money and they did nothing for me. They just wanted to get rid of me, basically. I'm like, kind of feel like I'm a number to you, like, But then there's been other doctors who have like done amazing things for me, and I'm really, really grateful. So not to paint, everyone with the same brush or whatever, but I think there's systems which incentivize certain behavior, and free market capitalism, as opposed to, oh, your medical bills are being paid for by the government, so I don't even need you. Right? And I'm just in and out and it doesn't matter. And you've no real other option because it's too hard for people to start a clinic to compete with me. So, these big clinic corporations where there's so many people involved, there's no real relationship between me and the owner. If it's like, no, there's two doctors here, they run it together as partners, and I'm here and I don't really appreciate the service, then maybe I'm going to tell them, hey, I don't appreciate this. Or maybe I'm going to go talk to my friends, and maybe your business is going to be in trouble if your reputation starts suffering. And it can, take a lifetime or take years to build trust and a reputation. It just takes one moment to lose it, or one, very interesting conversation from someone who starts saying, oh, I got a bad experience from there. So in that kind of situation, I think the businesses are much more sensitive to the needs of the community. They would go for schools, go for, health clinics, go for all kinds of businesses, right? And so they're more responsive. So that would be where money is serving, the system of capitalism is being beneficial. So money itself is not a problem there. Now let's take it even one step more primal. So money, like, instead of, the alternative would be barter, right? Like, oh, I'm a fisherman. Okay, I have fish. Do you want some fish? What do you have? Like, I say you have, you're growing vegetables. I want your vegetables. Here, have some fish. And you're like, oh, I don't eat fish. I think that, they're conscious beings. I'm not into that. Well, okay, fair enough. Well, I hope you're not judging me too much for being a fisherman, but okay. Damn, I can't trade with you. I really want those vegetables. I'm too busy catching fish to do vegetables at the same time. So then I go, okay, wait a minute. But our neighbor over there is makes clothes, and there's got some blankets, say, or whatever. I go, okay. So do you want? Do you want some blankets? Oh yeah, I do. Okay, I'm gonna go trade. Hopefully, the blanket maker wants some fish. I'm gonna go trade it with her, and then and then lo and behold, she does want some fish. I get the blanket. I go to you. Here's the blanket. Can I have my vegetables now? Deal. So it's obviously not as efficient. Barter is more people going like, oh, you have a bunch of eggs or whatever. Oh yeah, I have a bunch of vegetables. Oh yeah, we can do a trade sometime. But it's not very fluid. It's not very flexible. Whereas if we all have a thing we can agree upon as having value, like money, like, oh, this is a currency, this thing, let's call it the docker, all right? That's the unit, the docker, right? It's money, and it's this thing, and they all look the same. They're all, interchangeable or whatever. Here, everyone in the community accepts this as being worth one, certain price, like a value. Everything's valued in terms of them. Bread is one of them, and usually, a cup of coffee would be one of them, and whatever with, prices. Oh, there's not much fish at the moment. Okay, Jamie here is going to raise the prices on his fish. He can get more money for it. Everyone wants it. There's not enough fish for everyone. All right, well, to figure out who really wants it more, and so I can, get ahead a bit and make some money and improve my house because I got another baby on the way or whatever it is, I'm going to raise the price of my fish. And so the people who didn't really want the fish or didn't really need it, okay, they drop out of the bidding and they don't pay for it. But the people who really wanted it or needed it, they'll pay a bit more for that. And so the price of the fish goes up, right? That's just a simple way, economics, right? But people are paying in terms of this docker thing, whatever, the currency. And so I can buy my vegetables with that. The fish, whoever wants fish, they give me these coins, and then I can use that to get everything I need. So it's much more efficient, right? And why does that matter? Well, we can solve our problems more quickly. Whatever you want and need, we can solve our problems with this. And now the problem, of course, would be if you just have an infinite supply of these, one person can just, have a bunch of them and just buy everything. And then there's not enough for everyone else in the community. So we need things which you can't just copy and make out of nowhere, things which are very rare. So you can't just copy it, You could go looking for it, but it wouldn't be a big problem, right? So gold, silver, for example, things like this. Or paper money if the government doesn't just print it to infinity, which is what they've been doing for like a long time now, at least 100 years. And in recent years, crazy. Just inflation. Where's the inflation coming from? Government printing your money. Just like, everyone laughs about like, oh my God, stupid Zimbabwe printing all that money. Yeah, fast forward 10 years, see what, the most advanced economies are doing. So anyway, money is, like what's the alternative? Do we want to have barter, or a centrally planned communist economy? That didn't work so well, and in principle, it doesn't really make sense. And then in practice, it's always failed. One more time, one more chance, baby. I'm good for you. Give me one more chance. No socialism, abusive relationship. Get out of my house. So that's, the basics of money. It's per se, like, what's the benefit of money? Well, it's just a way of having a system of freedom and decentralized problem solving for the people, The only problem is the main problem is when someone uses a bunch of their dockers or whatever, and they go, hey, the village guard, right? Maybe there's three people with big sticks who spend all day working out, and they're just tanks. They're just really strong, and they're the protectors of the village from wild animals or other villages or whatever. And let's say I'm the fisherman, and I go, hey lads, come here. I'm going to give you a bunch of money, and I want you to go intimidate that other fisherman, and so then I can raise the prices of my fish even more. That's in a very simplified way. That's kind of what corporatocracy is, or crony capitalism, which is basically a form of socialism. But yeah, so where the companies basically rig the game by using money to buy the apparatus of state, which is meant to be independent. So the government is meant to just be protecting property rights. So you have your property, no one can take it. If someone tries to beat you up or kill you or take your stuff or defraud you, lie to you. This is gold. Okay, great. I buy it. Hey, that's not gold. This is gold-covered chocolate. What are you trying to play at? Too late. Made the deal. That's fraud. The three guys with clubs come in and they, oh, sorry. Right. You have to go in the naughty corner for a day, Leonard. You know. So that would be a healthy system where you cut basically your good faith is is enforced, right? You can do whatever you want as long as you don't start depriving other people of their freedom to do the same. So, yeah, that's not what we have. So okay. So I hope that's clear enough for my point there about like money and why it's a great thing fundamentally in society, and there's no real alternative. It's the best system we have. It's not perfect, but and of course, some people will in nature, there's the Pareto principle, like the 80-20 principle. 20% of people end up with all the land. 20% of, I don't know, the lions probably get all the lionesses. 20% of the musicians make all the hits, or make 80% of the hits. That'd be, 20% of analogies carry 80% of the communication, etc. Right? So there's a minority exercising majority influence. And that's just all across nature. You see that, and you see like hierarchies based upon that principle. And it's not totally clear why this happens, I guess, but that it's kind of like a bell curve, like a normal distribution, where you've got extremes, a small number of people who are very, very good at something, and a small number who are very bad. Most people in the middle somewhere. That seems to be the pattern of things in nature, and a wave, and it seems that over generations kind of tends to generate, I don't know, these systems where I don't know, it's outside my understanding. But point being, you do have hierarchies where people will be at the bottom and they don't have much stuff. And I don't know if that would maybe be cured by a more free market economy. Like, for example, what America had between the Civil War, 1860-ish, until the introduction of the Federal Reserve, 1913, when everything started going wrong. And they brought in the income tax at the same time, just for very rich people, not for the normal people, of course not. And then over decades, sneakily, but slowly and surely, they started bringing in the tax for, lower and lower incomes, to the point now where everyone's just taxed, their lifeblood. But in order for a bloated bureaucracy, which doesn't really do a great amount of good for the people, and which I think can't, in principle, and doesn't in practice, solve problems as well as a decentralized system of the private market, free market could. You wouldn't want the government making your phone, but apparently you want them providing your healthcare or schools, So, right, in that period between the Civil War and, World War I, or like introduction of the Federal Reserve in America, they had enormous expansion of the middle class, and all these immigrants from Europe went there because of like the American dream. You can have whatever you want, like you can move forward, you can have social mobility. It wasn't just like, now it's a cliche and, a nightmare or whatever, or the thing George Carlin said, they call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it, or believe in it. But it was a real thing, that people could, they basically, you were given nothing by the government, but you were allowed to keep the fruits of your labor. Whereas in Europe, you weren't. Everyone was taxing you, like the kings and princes. And the bourgeoisie or the elite. They were, they had it under control, as they largely do today as well. But then in America, that's kind of become more like the European kind of style. But nonetheless, like if there was that kind of system where people were allowed to keep the fruits of their labor, and there's this enormous expansion of the middle class where people get there with nothing. And then there was no visa as well, and a third of people just went home because there was no supports, or who knows why they went home, but a third of people didn't stay there. But those who did stay, their children were able to, have a better life than they did, and then their grandchildren had an even better life and were going to university and things like this. So maybe that system with modern technology would be able to totally avoid people falling off the bottom of the hierarchy, but or maybe some element of socialism is required, some sort of safety net. So I don't know. I think possibly that would be one of the problems, imperfections of the system of money and capitalism. That maybe we do need to keep a certain amount of taxes to support these people with a safety net. And I think definitely, as all going well, we would transition toward a more free market economy. Um, and I think probably that's going to be inevitable because I think the system's kind of falling apart as we speak. Although certain billionaires might want to put in a centralized fascist kind of style system, China style, um, central bank digital currencies, all this kind of nonsense. Um, so central planning again. But I think the real solution is free market capitalism. Um, but I think as a transition, it'll be keep certain elements of the socialism and welfare net, but just transition in towards more and more freedom, meaning more and more lower and lower taxes and lower regulation of individuals' economic life, and then start lowering the government spending and services. After the private industry with we're keeping all this tax money and it's much easier to start businesses and do things, buy and sell. Okay, so when the economic growth starts happening, then you can start lowering the government spending because you won't need it anymore. So I'm not saying doing this overnight, but anyway, okay. So that's a general thing about money and why I think the system is the best we have. It's not perfect, but okay. And then talking more on an more individual level about money in our lives. So yeah, you can get lost in money, and there's people who, but maybe let's talk. Yeah, there's people who, they're not happy, but they're just chasing money, climbing the corporate ladder, and someone told them that apparently that is where happiness comes from, and so and maybe it gives them a sense of purpose and a sense of achievement, dopamine, like motivation, and like, yeah, look, I'm doing this and that. I'm busy and I'm wearing this cool suit and I'm, going around the world, or I'm, being productive. But at a certain point, I think it can be just spinning your wheels where you're actually going through the motions, but you're not really achieving anything. It's like maybe you're making more and more money, or maybe you're climbing up a ladder, but why? Are you happy now? And if you are happy and you want to keep climbing it just because it's meaningful, you enjoy what you're doing, then great. I think that's the whole thing. It's got to come from joy and happiness and meaning. It's not all necessarily about happiness, although I think to be happy, it makes it much easier to be having a positive impact on the world. You're more balanced. Um, Generally, I think that feel good state is kind of has evolutionarily, basically, if you open the hood, look under the bonnet, like what's going on when you're happy, I think it's like your life is aligned with, basically you're living in harmony with your environment. Probably that's like a signal of yeah, good, keep doing that, keep doing that. It's a feedback loop to help us, or an alarm system to help us know, like, okay, what's the right path. So it's not like, oh, happiness isn't important, just help the world or whatever. I think happiness is important. You don't want to be selfish and narcissistic and hedonistic, but yeah, like I think it's a guide rail sort of thing, which is kind of like, if you're not happy, then okay, you're probably doing something wrong. Are you not? Like, why wouldn't you be happy? There's something going off. Yeah. So, um, but so if you're happy and you're, pursuing money, and it's just an extra thing, yeah, cool. It's just fun. Then cool, go for it. If that makes you happy, if that's what makes you happy, if that's fun for you or meaningful, or if you're pursuing it, you're happy, but then you're climbing the corporate ladder because it as a means to an end. So it's not intrinsically rewarding, but you're going to be able to get a boat that you want or a house that you want, and you're kind of playing The Sims in real life. You're getting opening money is opening the doors to experiences and possessions that you want. Then sure, great. If that's what you want, go do it. What's wrong with that? You're not hurting anyone. People might say you're hurting the planet, but I don't think so, really, actually. Like, um, try to, not be littering around, but um, uh, you're an animal, you're an earthling, you have a right to be here as much as anyone else. So live your life, and sometimes it's a blurry line with the rights of, say, what wildlife in general, and then humans in particular. But in general, I think I'm not a person who thinks, yeah, get rid of industrialized society, that'll be better. I think the flowers of consciousness that humanity provides are, you know, Mother Nature absolutely loves it and wants us to be here. Um, we're not a parasite. There are parasites in our midst, that's for sure. But humanity is definitely beloved by our mother, and we have a right to be here and to live your life, have your experiences, participate in the market and buy and sell things, consume, sure. But I think it's like, do whatever is fulfilling to you, and you will slowly over time start to evolve naturally to a point where your joys and your sufferings, especially your sufferings, are going to teach you, and you're going to grow more and more conscious. And so just naturally over time, you're going to refine your tastes. Like someone who starts drinking dirt, instant coffee, and then, this coffee's delicious, this filter coffee. And then, this mocha, percolator coffee, that's really good. And then eventually, it's a bit metallic though. What's going on there? Have you noticed? And then, this espresso, that's the stuff. Your tastes get more and more refined through experience. And so I think people through a lifetime, and seemingly probably over lifetimes, many lifetimes, we definitely within families, lineages, lessons can be learned. And so we become more and more conscious, more and more towards the ideal of our better side and earning our place, as at the apex of the global pyramid. But so, I think there's nothing wrong with wanting money and wanting to experience things and all the opportunities that money can provide you. And a lot of those opportunities, why do they cost money? Shouldn't it just be free? It's like, well, like we said, there are costs for things. It requires energy, it requires materials. So that, if someone's like, oh, that's so expensive. Yeah, but that doesn't really matter. It's just the only real expensive should just be pejorative if it's overpriced. I'd say expensive is neutral. Overpriced is a problem. Oh, they're trying to take too much money off you. But then again, if they can do it, if people want to pay it, then okay, I guess that's their right to do it, no? It's voluntary. You don't have to. They're not putting a gun to your head. If you don't want to pay that for it, then don't do it. But if it's worth it to you, you will do it. So voluntary, mutually beneficial in exchanges, freedom. But then there's a bunch of things where maybe the person is like, well, look, actually, this is very high level, information I can give you, or a very high quality of service in general or product. And so either the input costs are very high, so I'm going to charge a lot for it, and you might think that's ridiculous, but actually it's just necessary. This is my cost. These are my costs. And you might, so that's quite, things might be expensive, but it might be worth it. Or even just they can charge that and people are willing to pay it. So that's just the way it is, So yeah, money can allow you access to these things. That said, so many things in life, I think the best things are free. You don't need money to be breathing, or just you need money for food, I guess. Although in most, advanced economies, so to speak, like the industrialized world, I don't think people are starving. Like the government will provide you the basics to eat, and survive. And I think really you just need to be with your, ultimately, like just awakening. That's all you need. Like you don't need money for that, that's the greatest pleasure there is, and joy, really. And so, but, or being with family, love, watching movies. There's a lot of things you can do for free on the internet. I guess you need enough money for an internet connection. But the point, I'm sure you get the idea. There's a lot of things that don't require money. And I think there's a great opportunity for simplifying things and just finding ways where like, oh, actually, I don't need to eat out. I'm just going to make my own food, and I put in a bit more time, but less money. So, and there is that aspect of sacrificing time for money, which is why money really has value, because we don't have unlimited time. We need to sacrifice time for money, time and energy. Um, but so money can bring these things, right? And not just experiences and possessions. Money can also so bring you relationships, right? So if you want to start a family, for example, if you don't have money, if you're not working, then how are you going to support the children? How can you have a relationship with your children if you don't have money, right? And you might think, well, that's not fair because I want to have children. Yeah, but I mean, the wolf can be like, it's not fair that all these deer are so fast, or the deer are like, it's not fair that wolves exist. Like, well, yeah, but have fun complaining about nature. Wouldn't it be wiser to just kind of learn how to go with the flow and play the game well? And so there's a certain, extent to which it's true. Like, and working can be great if you love what you're doing. If you do your best, whatever you're doing. I've been a dishwasher and a waiter in a pizzeria, and this and that, like small things. Some apprentice chef in some burger joint in Edmonton, Canada, and done some greasy, hard work, and I always did my best, and so I always felt a sense of pride in it, And there's infinite room for doing your best, no matter what you're doing. Do your best, and then you can move up hierarchies, get better jobs, or at least make the most of that experience, and maybe people will treat you better because they see you're putting in effort. Most people will. The people who really matter will do that. But anyway, making money will, for example, having children, and for that matter, attracting a partner. Especially, I think, some people might take umbrage with this idea, but I do think biologically it's built in, and apparently, it makes sense intuitively and theoretically, but it's backed up by research, I believe, which is that women in general are more attracted to men who can provide, like, are financially stable. And I think there'll be exceptions to that, and I'm sure it's not like a black and white thing, but there's going to be an influence, a big influence. So if you want a long-term relationship and you're a heterosexual male, then, you can complain about money, but you could, and be cynical. Oh, why do they want money? Shouldn't they just be, a woman? I want a woman who can hang out with me and just, I don't know, go to the public library and read books together and just, not pursue money. Cool, then do that. But, if you just want a relationship with a woman in general, then maybe you would need to seed the ground there a bit and kind of go, yeah, okay, maybe I'm taking this anti-money thing too seriously. And maybe, it's natural to be able to want access to opportunities and protection from starvation should the apocalypse hit or something, or just, just be able to have enough money for good schools for the kids or whatever. It's a rather beautiful thing, I think, if you take a step back, the idea of abundance and prosperity and affluence within your own life, spiritually first, but then also like materially. Why not? Be a flowering garden, and be bountiful, have great harvests by your hand, with working in the world, and kind of like noble sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time and your energy to get resources. That's kind of a beautiful thing. And then it makes it more enjoyable when you're just chilling out, I think. And then also spiritually, like these things mirror each other. So if you can do that in the world, then I think it makes it easier to have self-discipline, and be able to make sacrifices in your internal world in order to be in balance and be an attractive, balanced, interesting, whatever, happy person. And so that would be another example of like relationships where I think money, if you get too caught up on an anti-money thing, it could be limiting yourself in certain ways. What else? Status, right? So now this is one where, I think, and for sure, I think it's possible just to finish with relationships. For sure, you can find people who would be like you, who don't think much of money or whatever. But I think just in general, that is a pattern to be aware of, Um, and I don't think it's something we need to be like, resentful of. It's like, oh, that's just natural. I'm sure the bears are the same, the birds are the same. Birds would go like, oh, is this male able to bring in enough worms for the babies? Or look at the nest they make. How creative are they? And that's another thing. It's not just about bringing in, being hardworking, but it's admirable qualities that I guess makes you admire the person. And humans, it wouldn't be just biological, I think, but the biological basis of it is you can provide for and protect the young. That's the whole bottom line of evolution is procreation. And so we have our free will kind of surfing these waves, but the waves themselves are largely generated by the patterns of evolution and procreation. And that's kind of fun. It's like you got your free will and this enlightened free perspective, but you're engaging with and kind of embodying half the time these kind of comically biologically grounded animal impulses. It's amazing, so like the joy of, say, me, I don't know, taking care of my girlfriend, right? I'm like, yeah, it makes me feel wonderful, and in some way that's like, I'm sure the bear who's like doing good and the woman's like, yeah, cool, I like this cave you've got and defend it from the other bears. She's probably feeling a similar thing of like, yeah, I'm in my element, I'm doing my thing, I'm in balance or whatever with my nature and purpose on the animal level. But yeah, humans, of course, we can kind of transcend that more and more through our logic and reason. We're not totally, dictated and determined by it. But so, okay, back. So that's relationships. But status, I think a lot of people, again, like a lot of people will pursue money for status because, people are going to see them, whether it's, a man trying to have a relationship with a woman and thinking, in general, women marry across and up hierarchies. So, whereas men marry across and below, usually. So, is that right? Wait, did I get that right? Yes, exactly. So, like, usually in general, if you look at marriages, whatever, women would be marrying people who are at their level financially, or kind of these analogs like social or political, say, status, or higher above, they wouldn't really be going down below usually, and the opposite for men. And so that's a pattern in nature, but so that's one driver, of course, say for men, which is the more masculine of the status, pursuit of status is more of a masculine pattern. Women can have that, sure, of course. And men can have more feminine patterns. That's fine, whatever. But yeah, that is the pattern. And partly that's biological, And then also, of course, just competition. Just once it's there, consciousness is flowing within this milieu. It's like just keeps the snowball effect just keeps going. Like, oh, the love of competition for competition's sake, and the desire to be the best, at whatever you're doing. So there's layers to it. But people, yeah, pursue status. But I think the unhealthy part of it is where, again, it's you're not clear on what you want. Well, I guess in a way it's healthy. It's just a lower level of consciousness. It's like you are pursuing status so that you look good in other people's eyes. But why do you care what other people think of you, Why don't you just care about being good in your own eyes? And so if being good in your own eyes, if achieving some sort of status, like being a really loved musician or artist or, business person who creates all these services which help people, if that really helps you feel really good about yourself and like you've achieved your purpose, you've sung your song, you've given your gift, then wonderful, and pursue that. I think that's the healthy kind of way to pursue status, where it's like the achievement of a dream that's important to you. So it's not really the status so much as the dream. But then there are people who want status because of what it will give them, and so it's like a kind of an intermediary. And so they want, and they want status so that people respect them and so that they can feel good about themselves because other people are telling them, oh, you're really good, and they get invited to the right parties or whatever. And so maybe they want money because money will give them the status. Status will give them these other things like interpersonal relationships or a kind of lifestyle, being involved in certain groups, etc. So I'm not really into that personally, but I think if it makes you happy, then I wouldn't have scorn against it. I just think probably the people who do that eventually would realize like, oh, actually it's not that satisfying to be living vicariously through how I appear in other people's eyes. Like I think it doesn't really give you what you're expecting. That's just my theory. I don't know. Maybe it is very, very satisfying. I don't know. But so money can be pursued for status, and then I think a lot of the time it causes people to get bitter if you're trying to do that, or just to get away from yourself, because we're all going to die. Are you going to go, oh, I'm really happy I made all that money and got all that status and people really respected me? Or are you going to go, well, actually, maybe I should have put a bit more time into just following my own bliss and like doing what made me happy and what made me feel like I was giving my gift to the world. Like that, what's it, the guy, the Rockefeller? Is it Nathan Rockefeller? No, I don't know what. One of the Rockefellers, right? I think he was the richest man in the world at the time. This is like 100 years ago, was it? I'm not sure. But he, on his deathbed, someone said, you're still making all this money. Do you really need to be making more? How much more money do you need? He's already insanely wealthy, and he's still working till the day he died. And he said, apparently, just a little more. And it's always more. And the thing with more is, it's like tomorrow never comes. By the time tomorrow comes, quote unquote, it's today, and there's a new tomorrow. So more, you in a way you can have more. Oh, now I've eaten more. I'm full now. Or, but another way, more never ends. A bit more heroin, a bit more money, a bit more, whatever it is. And so money, I guess, in that way, can obviously be a kind of addictive thing where you're not getting what you expect from it. It's not giving you what you expect it to give, and you need more and more of it to get the same level of satisfaction, and it's starting to limit your range of enjoyable activities where you start getting obsessed with it. That's kind of like some hallmarks of addiction, and it seems like money does that for a lot of people. I guess largely because it's connected to certain things, like, we've mentioned, connected to survival, and a lot of people are just afraid. Maybe their parents were really poor, and so they go way deep into trying to get money. But I think, but yeah, there's a balance there. And so, for example, a lot of people who I grew up with, like I remember being a teenager and kind of feeling pretty cynical about money. Well, at first I wanted a lot of money. I was all excited about that, and then had some experiences which kind of caused me to reset my perspectives a bit. And I kind of fell into this soared into this kind of bohemian phase of like, Jack Kerouac on the road, and just wanted to travel and drink wine and, do whatever and just hang out and play music and have experiences. And the idea of possessions and money seemed kind of silly to me. And I think that was a necessary stage for me to grow through, so that's all good. I'm grateful for that. It was a great time, But, I think there's a bunch of people, it's when you're comfortable in society and your parents are paying for a lot of your stuff and you've got, free rent, or you're paying a little bit of board, but you're living with them. And in general, in your society, it's pretty easy to get things. You can do a bit of work and get a lot. Whereas to get the same level of lifestyle in some third world country, you would need to be working far more hours. There's sort of these, and when you're in a comfortable context, it's easy for you and for us, like I was one of these people, to not really appreciate money and to kind of not understand the value of money. And for example, the value of, okay, maybe I want to make some sacrifices with my career. Maybe I want to be practical and get a job where I have a career, like study something which is going to get me a job. And, I would usually think do something that you're passionate about, but I think there is something to be said there for something practical so that you set yourself up. And so in the future, you will have a foundation of resources coming in where you can kind of have a stable life and focus on what you want and, start a family or go traveling a bunch or have a bunch of free time activities. So I think in general, a lot of the people in my friend circle growing up, we would all have been like, maybe some are still kind of seeing it this way. I don't know. It's kind of like, oh, money's a drag, wouldn't it be better if we didn't have money or money? But then if I talk to my students, because I teach English as a second language or foreign language, whatever, and a lot of them are coming from pretty more deprived backgrounds. So there's Somali refugees, there's people from Brazil who, might be middle class or lower middle class, or, people from China or Japan or Vietnam, some part of wherever, all over the place. And they, almost all of them are like, oh yeah, money, 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 very important. And they all want money and they love it. And to them, it's this beautiful vision, this idea of money. And so that, I think, has had a countervailing influence on me of being like, what's so bad about having money? Why do they all want money? And I think a lot of it is, if you don't have enough money, it can be a terrible thing. And you can't, good luck being your true self and kind of raising your head above the, raising your eyes to the stars if you don't have enough money. Now, you don't need it. You can be like these yogis in India, with nothing, just a mendicant's bowl, going around begging for food, wearing the saffron robe, and you're doing yoga and connecting to the universe. And sure. But I think a lot of people in between that extreme, it's like if you're stressed or if you're working 3 jobs and you're stressed and you don't have much time you can kind of get trapped in this thing where it's hard to really appreciate your life and to be your best self. And so there is something to be said for maintaining a certain baseline of money and resources, the opportunities that money brings, in order to maintain homeostasis. Because I think there's a certain point of pressure where you don't have enough resources, where for every increase down the scale of pressure, you need to have a greater consciousness to manage it. There's levels of poverty where I would not be able to manage because I'm not, say wise enough or spiritually grounded enough. And I don't really want to go there. I mean, if I had to, I would do my best to enjoy it. But, I think there is something to be said for the balance of having enough money. However, I think, say, my students, the perspective they could benefit from is this more middle-class perspective of, like, say, middle-class bohemians of being like, well, where does it end? So actually, apparently, studies show that after you've got your basic needs catered for, increases in money don't correlate to an increase in happiness. And so I think that's the thing where people, like, say, the Beatles, they got everything really early, fame, money, other things. And they said, they realized, oh, it's not it. There's something more. And then they went into spirituality. And so I think back, I guess, just into creativity, creating and enjoying art and, as well as that deep spirituality. So I think that's the kind of the middle ground. It's like between being struggling in a slum and kind of being bored out of your mind, in business school, in middle class Western country or whatever, Western, context, some sort of meaningful middle, So now to do that, it seems like to me there's a kind of a 3 thing for your career or the balance of because you have to make money. Everyone has to earn their place in the universe, more or less, except for the Rothschilds, right? They just need to kind of we earn the money and we earn their the right not to get slaughtered. Hopefully, please God. Um, so, uh, uh, no offense to any potential oligarchs who may or may not be running the planet. We're all brothers and sisters. Some of us just have nicer clothes and work fewer hours. But yeah, so I think the triangle, the all-seeing triangle of what would be beneficial in my mind for kind of, if like someone was like, oh, I'm trying to think about what career to do, like my path with money, how am I going to interact or engage with that across time in my life? I think three things to think of are what are you good at? And so things that you're not good at, you probably shouldn't be doing that for money, right? That's not going to work. Because how are you going to solve people's problems and make money, whether it's as your own business or if it's you're working for an employer? An employer needs someone to teach a class. I can do that. Okay, I'm solving their problem. They give me money. And the school is solving these people's problem of, you don't speak English. Here, we'll help you with that, right? So whatever it is, you need to be something you're good at and simultaneously something that you enjoy doing. So maybe I think I could, I don't know, I might be good at, I got a pretty good memory. So been times where I consider doing law and like thinking, I think, I feel like I could kind of understand the way rules are framed and like how they interact and stuff, but it kind of bores me a bit. So I'm not really interested. It's not quite, in my mind, creative enough. I don't know, it can be very creative, but just I kind of felt like it wasn't quite for me. So I was studying that and then I stopped in the past because it didn't meet that enough for me, like of what I enjoy doing. It makes me feel like, yeah, I'm alive and this is why I'm here. So something you're good at and simultaneously something you enjoy, right? So that's like the overlap there of those circles. It's like a Venn diagram. And then we add one more circle, okay, where which would be what can make you enough money for the lifestyle you want. And so say law would tick that, yeah, and then also, yep, ticks what I'm good at. I think I didn't go all the way, so I don't know, but I feel like, and my brother's, a good lawyer, so it probably runs in the family, so that would overlap there, but it doesn't overlap with what I'm enjoy doing, I feel, right? So, but then maybe certain other things, like maybe I could, I don't know, be a wandering minstrel, play music and recite poetry. I think I could do that well, and I think I would enjoy it. But then, is it going to make me money? Don't think so. So it wouldn't tick that. So you're trying to find that overlap of those three circles, and there could be some feedback where the more you enjoy something, the more you're going to practice, and so then the better you'll get at it. And then the better you get at something, the more money people are willing to pay. Or the more money people are willing to pay, maybe the more you enjoy something. Or the more money people pay, the more you're willing to do it, and so you'll get better and practice. So there's these kind of feedback loops, but these overlap of those three principles. I think if you can find something you're good at, or you think you could be good at, and that you enjoy, or you think you could enjoy, and that will make you money, or you think could make you money, potentially. So I think that's kind of, in my mind, the thing I have in my head. Yeah, maybe you want to put it in your head, or maybe you don't want me putting things in your head. Then why are you listening to this podcast? So yeah, so that would be money. Anything else to mention with money? I mean, I guess like we could go into how it should be backed by gold, put on something where they can't just inflate it, like traditionally it was backed by gold. Okay, if you're going to increase the money supply, government, then you need to have more gold in the vaults. And that was a way of making sure that you didn't just keep printing money out of thin air and then ruining the economy, because every dollar in your bank account, when they increase the money supply, say by 10%, as they have, I think they double the money supply in America the last few years, something insane, When you do that, you you don't just magically increase the number of goods and services in the economy. No, you just increase the number of tokens which can be traded. And so now some random dude can go and buy up a bunch of stuff, and there's not enough stuff for other people. So that doesn't, and the people who get the tokens when government prints money is the government's best friends, the big corporations who are connected to them. And that's what happened during the COVID period, and has been happening for a long time, in different ways. But so basically what happens there is there's only a certain value to the economy, which is the sum of all the goods and services being offered. And you can't exactly quantify it, but there's some rough, you can make a rough comparison of value. Oh, this economy compared to that economy, there's more goods and services available. So it's wealthier, right? It's very clear, simple. And so by printing more money, you're not increasing the quantity of goods and services. So what actually happens is the value of the economy is now just divided. Instead of being divided by X units of currency, it's now divided by 1.1x if you increased the supply by 10%. And so the value of each unit, each docker or whatever, each unit of currency, it goes down. And so it's a hidden tax on your savings. The government has been taxing you without your consent your whole life, but especially recently, where the money in your bank account, say you have $20,000 and the government goes and prints an extra 10% of the money supply. Now you have, I don't know, $15,000 in your bank or $18,000, less, right? By what you can buy with it. You go and try and buy the same things you could have bought with your 20 grand. You won't be able to buy it anymore with the 20 grand in your bank because prices have gone up because they just increased the supply of tokens and the bidding war goes up, and that's the way it works. So that's why it's never worked in the past. Didn't work for Argentina or Zimbabwe or the Weimar Republic or ancient Greece or Rome when they devalued currencies. It never goes well. So that's what we're doing. So that's, I think, just a few things to mention with money at the tail end here that are kind of probably pertinent. So there's that. They're able to just print money, and so then it's a hidden tax on your savings. You had to work, sacrifice your time and energy to get that money. They just, I suck your milkshake, I drink your milkshake, they just take it. And a second way, there's three ways they can tax, right? They can just tax you, and they do that. Often in Ireland, there's all these little sneaky taxes with nice names. And you're like, wait a minute, how much tax am I paying? It's hard to add it all up, And then there's the inflation, where they're getting money by printing more without asking you and not doing anything for it. So now they've got more money to spend. Most of it goes to their politically connected entities, and that's at the expense of normal people from their bank accounts. They've got less purchasing power now. And then the third way is debt, by borrowing money that has to be paid back in the future. And given that money only comes from taxation, whether by direct taxation or by sneaky inflation taxation, same just as before, it leads back to the taxpayer losing more of their savings. So if it's not now, then it's your children or grandchildren paying it back. So there's these three ways: taxation, inflation, and then borrowing, where the government can just take our money, basically. And largely without our consent. Like a lot of the basic ideas, like I believe in taxation and supporting a state, but I think, like, what's the limit? If it's like, okay, we're going to double the number of civil servants, and we're going to make sure they got real nice mahogany desks. We're going to have like an aquarium. It's going to be really beautiful. It's going to be an aquarium in the main lobby. You should see the designs. At what point do we go, this is way too much of our resources. What are we doing? Like, the bang for our buck is not worth this. You take from one hand and you give back with the other. And in the meantime, you burn up a bunch of the wealth through, inefficient bureaucracy, or people who aren't doing their job but don't get fired because their unions don't want them fired. And, if the government doesn't do a good job with a service, what are you going to do? You can't, it's not like capitalism where you can not give them your money and then they go bankrupt or they have to adapt. No, if they're not doing a good job, usually they'll just get more money because, we got to put more money, raise taxes, or borrow more. Don't tell them we're raising taxes. And so that department gets more money. Oh, that must be the problem. They don't have enough money. So there's all these ways where our money kind of gets sucked out of us, and through maintaining monopolies where these companies are friendly with government and they can kind of have the rules set in a way which benefits them, or they have certain no bid contracts, or maybe it's a bidding contract, but certain exchanges happen, and whether that's words or other things being exchanged, threats, promises, envelopes, and lo and behold, certain people get the contract, and maybe they weren't actually the best person for the job. So there's many ways where there's unfair interference in the playing field of competition, and again, we end up paying more than we should, whereas if there was free competition, we'd be paying a lot less of our money out for the goods and services to support ourselves. So these might seem like petty things, like is this relevant? Or maybe someone who's more spiritual might be like, I am on the mountain, I am fine, none of this matters. And in a way, that's true. But in another way, ¿por qué no los dos? Why not both? It's also true that it does matter, and it isn't fair. And wouldn't it be fun if we could set that straight and have the light of truth, just shine in like Gandalf's staff, and kind of just bringing justice and a system of sense and logic and conscience back. And so I think a lot of that starts with money, actually. The monetary system, the Federal Reserve and these central banks. In Europe, it's slightly more complicated, but definitely the Federal Reserve is a private institution. It's not government. It's, as someone said, it's as federal as Federal Express. It's a private company. And it's the third central bank America has had, I would say, been plagued with, because the first two were ended for similar reasons, where people said, no, then they're kind of a parasite. They're helping themselves. They're not helping the people. And I suppose most people who work in them, I'm sure they think they're doing a good thing, but it seems like, it sure seems like at the highest level, there's institutions which are very, very traditional, if you get my meaning. Not traditional in the sense of like maybe a few hundred years old, like the traditions of, solving people's problems, free trade, I solve your problem, you give me money, mutually beneficial voluntary exchanges. Not that traditional, a bit more traditional. More like the traditions of slavery or might is right. That kind of really, really old school tradition. It seems like there are people and powers at the helm of these institutions, the central banks of the world, and maybe some of them are good. I don't know, but it sure looks like, from what I've got, full disclosure, I don't know, but from what I know so far, the money system, the people who print the money, they're private institutions, and they're the exemplars. They're like the Oscar winners, the Leonardo DiCaprios of corporate greed. And just get a little something on my microphone there. And they seem to be of the mind that they have the right to pursue extracting money from the normal people, much like I extract tomatoes from my tomato plant, or I pluck chamomile flowers and dry them to make some nice tea. That like, this is just the way it is. It's all natural. These are the harvests. Those who can't understand clearly aren't descended from, you're not the scion of some ancient lofty dynasty, and so you wouldn't understand, but if you can look into The Creature from Jekyll Island. There's a book about this. What was the other thing? There's this guy who wrote a book called Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind. He was a former director of the South African Central Bank. This guy was an insider. He was part of the central bank, and he said, I couldn't believe it. I'm telling you, it's all a scam. It's all a fraud. They're after the resources and nothing else. It's not about freedom. They're not there for a nice cup of rooibos on the Transveld and looking at the Reeboks and hanging out together in the spirit of friendship and brotherhood and fraternity. I'm telling you, they're after your soul. That's what he said, word for word. So, you know, and again, you know, wise man on the mountain says it doesn't really matter, that these systems are unfair, and that money, although it's at the root of, you know, because these systems, that's at the root of, I think, money being in politics also. And so try to remove money from politics. But these people, you know, some people make the argument that, you know, John F. Kennedy was trying to remove the central bank and then he disappeared. Interesting. Other people have tried to do this and then they disappear. So I don't know, but it is interesting. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that these people were assassinated because they were threatening powers. And I'm sure those powers, if that did happen, then definitely those powers thought that it was the right thing to do to protect the harvests and keep the operation going. And they probably thought it was all fair is fair, if this is what happened. But money in politics and these systems where it seems like government is out of control and it has monopolized, like it's the way that money is made is they're allowed to print as much as they want, and it can hook up their corporate buddies with it. You know, is that fair? Did you agree to that? Did you consent? Do you consent? I don't consent. You know, now the spiritual man on the mountain or woman, you know, would say, not only is it fine that it's all part of, it is as it is, and that's fine. You know, zoom out, where the pale little blue dot in the middle of space, it's not so serious. And that's true. Yeah, I agree with that. And it's no need to get your knickers in a twist. But at the same time, and part of that is that it's necessary for our evolution, I think, these sorts of institutions and these sorts of injustices, as I would call them, because I feel like that's not fair. And we could have an honest, open conversation, and I think most people would say it's not fair. So then, you know, I'd say the people in general, 99%, would say, yeah, that's not fair. Maybe 0.1% would say, no, we think it is fair. We think it's very fair indeed. Well, that's fine, but whose reality is realer? You know, people who maybe think, oh yeah, but we're very educated, so we know more, even if you have bigger numbers. But at a certain point, it's like, are you sure you're not crazy? You know, and I think you are, unfortunately. You know, very clever, crazy people who are out of touch with their conscience and their soul and their brothers and sisters. But it's kind of, I think it's all part of the evolutionary process of consciousness on the planet. And this, these systems are natural. They're a natural extension of my own psychology, your own psychology, all of our own psychology. If we were in those positions of power, that is the way it would go. If you had that brain and that upbringing, and maybe if you were, you know, you would make different choices with your soul's free will. I don't know. Maybe I would hope that my soul would make different choices, but who knows? But definitely the currents. You can understand why people born into a system of those social circles or families or institutions would kind of perpetuate these traditions of parasitic domination and hegemony over the planet, which previously were national, but then international, and now seemingly global. And you know, the Great Reset stuff, it sure looks like there's kind of this global attempt to assert sovereignty over the people by a small, shadowy elite. And maybe they think it's all for the best, you know. I hope they do, because then that means they're a bit more evolved than if they're just doing it for selfishness. But nonetheless, it's misguided. But so this is, I guess, the dark side of money and zooming out, like geopolitics. But I think a lot of people, when say I'm saying this, even me, I'm thinking, oh, should I say that? Is that a little too candid? Well, why not? You know, so that's good for my evolution, where I'm being, yeah, be more honest. Good, say what you think. And again, I'm not saying I know this. I'm saying some things I know, but a lot of these things where I go into spicier territory, I'm like, I don't know this, but this is the impression I have. That's completely honest, and that's completely backed up by evidence. What I just said, right? This is my impression, but I don't have enough evidence to be sure. And I wish a lot more people would talk like that. Like, hey, it seems like the planet's being taken over by oligarchs. That's the impression I get. Man, I have the same impression. Maybe we should go check that that's not happening. Um, and oh, what do you know? A lot of people think that's happening. A lot of smart journalists and stuff. So maybe if, you know, certain authoritarian laws are brought in over something which isn't actually that dangerous, but you're told it's very dangerous. Interesting. Maybe you would think that a coup was in place. And maybe you'd be, you know, leaning toward that assumption. So, but yeah, so one example would be me, like, becoming less afraid of looking crazy, being like, yeah, sure, I'll tell you what I think. I think probably, you know, there's this kind of, these billionaires trying to run the planet, you know, and not all of them, you know, think about, you know, just because you have money doesn't mean you're evil or like part of some cabal. But if you had money, like, look at most humans, you know, a lot of people, we're not wise enough to be able to have that much power and influence. And a lot of people want money because of the power it can give them, the influence over others, right? You can make people do what you want, tell you how good you are and all that. I think a lot of, most people probably wouldn't be able to resist the lure of that, you know? And yeah, I don't know if I would be able to. I would hope that I could, but I don't know. Now, so, but then also, for like, a lot of people say when I'm saying this, people might think, or you might be thinking, like, oh man, that's a bit like conspiratorial. That's a bit crazy, you know? And yet I'm very careful with, like, to avoid being crazy and thinking crazy things. I'm like, you've no idea, actually. I'm very obsessive about it, you know? I'm very, very, very careful to, it's like like, just very curious. So I want to know what's real. It's like maybe more than anything, you know? I was trying to think recently, what's more important? Like, feeling good or seeing clearly? I was like, I don't know. I was just thinking it through, like, but I kind of leant toward feeling good, because I think you need to feel good in order to see clearly, I think, properly. Like, feel good in the deeper sense of, like, spiritual vibrations. But then also seeing clearly makes you feel good when you see really clearly. But who knows? Maybe it's two sides of the same coin of physical presence, just being here, embodied in the kind of presence state of pure consciousness. Could be. Anyway, but maybe you're thinking, oh my God, like, that's some pretty spicy ideas. I don't know if I believe in that. So I think, again, the fact of these people monopolizing money and the control of the money systems, it's so outrageously, like, what? How is that possible? That I think it's kind of like a gym for our minds, where it's like, that's also encouraging us to become, people might deny it or go, no, no way, or mock it. But then, so there's that process of kind of eventually about, maybe I should look into this. And so there's this tension there where people don't want to believe it. And so I think that also, and, you know, I felt that for sure in the past. I was like, that's ridiculous. But then, you know, over time, so it's like you're a video game of consciousness, and how honest can you be with yourself, and how diligent and careful and thorough can you be with actually going, what do I know? What do I not know? What do I know is a yes? What do I know is a no? And what's in the maybe pile? And am I actually totally sure that maybe I put some things in the no pile, but really belong in the maybe pile, or in the maybe pile they're in the yes pile, or whatever. But so money, and then I guess this segues into the idea that money is the root of all evil. So I think, no, money isn't the root of all evil, but it's a pretty thick branch, pretty close to the trunk, you know. But I think the root of all evil is the unconscious human mind, unconsciousness, or we could say the human mind in its. We could say the human mind, yeah. The human mind has many great things about it too, but um, it has a capacity to create narratives about what's going on, to model a situation in the mind. It models a situation. Oh, I think there are rich people and there are workers, and the rich people are exploiting the poor people. Oh my God, yeah, look at this situation. That perfectly maps on. And this one, it also maps on there. Oh yeah, and over there. Oh my God, this makes sense of all of history. Great. Hammer and sickle. Let's get to work, boys. You know? Then yeah, whoa, 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 whoa. Have you checked any other narratives that maybe they fit on and maybe even better? Because there's a few holes in that narrative. Look, this thing here contradicts it. Blah 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 blah. I don't want to hear. Don't tear apart my narrative. It feels very comforting. I know what's going on now. Well, hold on. Hold your horses. Hold your fire-breathing dragons of utopian disaster. Let's check. What about there are governments, there are armed bureaucracies, and there are the people. And the people can include businessmen, rich people, or poor people. The armed bureaucracy could have rather poor people in it. Maybe some zealots, fanatics who are, being treated poorly by the system, but they're absorbed by the ideology. They believe in it, and so you've got this state apparatus, this network of officers, and tax-free cars and perks and like salaries, and a bunch of guys with guns, like police, military, etc., SWAT teams, and the courts and the bureaucrats and the politicians, and the judges, or the courts, right? That this system, and I know many people who I love who are in these systems. So I'm not saying these are all bad or whatever. But one narrative might be that like, oh yeah, all those people, it's them against us, and then maybe people start hating the police or they start hating judges, or whatever, and they go, oh, actually that narrative, yeah, that maps onto history and things that we know. In fact, better than the Marxism, narrative does. Interesting, cool. Okay, so that's it. It's like, well, but and it's got fewer contradictions, within itself and with other evidence we know about. But then you might go, well, hold on. You're saying all police are bad or all this, but my friend is a cop and he's a really good guy, so what the hell? That doesn't make sense. And oh yeah, I get, well, and then, I just push that away, ignore that. And then, over time you can start to notice more and more contradictions and try to imagine more and more narratives, and you can try to get closer to reality. But especially when strong emotions come up, when there's a crisis, you go, look, stop talking. This is the narrative, and it says that this is the problem and this is the solution. So A to C, we need to go through B. This is what we're doing, to be or not to be. And and then if you say, well, I think your narrative's wrong, they go, hey, you're wasting time. How am I going to get to C via B if you keep talking? Shut your mouth. We're doing this, And so people get this sense of this primal, like, you're about to mess it all up. Stop, get out of the way. You don't understand. And that's, I think, with the COVID era, you had a lot of that. And, with Nazi Germany, you probably had a lot of that. Like, oh, the Jews are about to take over. What are you doing? You're like, no, there are brothers and sisters. Oh, don't give me that. And, so in all these situations, and I see it with the Ukraine thing at the moment, very sadly, there's these narratives, I was talking to a friend of mine recently, a very intelligent guy, who was kind of saying he thinks World War III is inevitable, more or less, and that we need to go to war with Russia because they've overstepped the boundary. And I was saying, look, I think there's been wrongs done on both sides, and we need peace talks. And he was saying, well, no, but then that's giving too much space to the Russians. Then they're going to be able to refuel, resupply, and we need to keep up the pressure. And so I could see he made a very good argument, very, very sophisticated, the most sophisticated argument I've heard for that side. And yet I still coming back to, look, there's holes in that. We need much more time to talk about it, but we didn't have enough time. And so all I was able to kind of try to communicate is like, look, war is not a good idea. This could escalate to nuclear war. Then everything's screwed. And we need to have peace talks and just whatever works to bring peace and sovereignty to Ukraine, right? So allow the Russians to feel like they've had some sort of real victory, or maybe they'll actually have a real victory of some sort. Maybe like, okay, demilitarization of Ukraine. They say that the eastern districts of Ukraine where ethnic Russians live were being shelled and attacked for like 6 years. A bunch of people say that's true. Other people say it's not true. I don't know. But and they say, Ukraine, there's a coup. We're getting a bit off topic, but I'll just wrap this up. But it's a good example, right? And then the other side saying, no, it's all Russia being aggressive. So you have different narratives, and people aren't really taking the time to check each other's narratives. Where's the evidence? Where are the contradictions? And so the mind maps the world with these narratives. But and when people get in the way, in these intense situations, the mind will behave illogically. And so bringing this back to money, the root of all evil is not money, but it is the human mind when it is unable to have pure consciousness. When the thinking mind is all there is, it's got these narratives. But you need consciousness, the eye of Horus, right? You need pure awareness to step in and look at this, look at that, and just have that space of thoughtless, funny term, thoughtless, empty of thought, but it's very thoughtful, to have that to be able to judge different narratives and compare them. And to basically consciousness, it's this unbiased, you step outside of these narratives and you can kind of assess things more logically and evenly. And so that would be my, I know it's a bit of a digression, but I think it's important. People lay the blame for all the problems of the world on money, but I think closer to the truth would be power. The people who are doing it for money, mostly they want money for power, like status, influence, and then direct ability to control people through buying things or buying people off or whatever, or threatening people through, I'll pull out my investment in this company if you do that. Or so power would be closer to the truth, and even closer than that would be the human mind when it is unable to be observed by consciousness. When your consciousness cannot, I'm sure a bunch of people, I don't know, hopefully a bunch of people listen to this, and because I think it's, things of import, clearly, then a certain amount of us here would be like, what's he talking about? I don't get it. Because it's not like that common to actually have that experience. It's something we really need to practice, and I wish we were taught in schools. I stumbled into it. A friend of mine got me into Buddhism a bit, and then I got interested in it, and not just Buddhism, but just general, the fact that you are able to observe your mind. You are not your mind. And you think you have these problems, or you think that person's a problem, or you think money's a problem. But actually these narratives, they're a prison. They're a prison, and they are the real problem. And some people's narratives say, I need to get money at all costs. Other people's narratives say, I can't trust this group of people or whatever. But at the end of the day, the ability to just step outside of a narrative and just look at it as, there are some thoughts. That's the key to avoiding all of our problems. And evil, I think, is basically the inability to connect to your own consciousness, to your own silence within, like this. So I wasn't thinking, So we can do that. And then when you start thinking again, it's kind of you've reset the clock a bit, and you've got fresh thoughts, and you're able to kind of control your mind a bit better. So there you go. That would be my humble take on the root of evil. So money, anything else to mention? I guess I would say I wish you wealth, mostly spiritual, but then also material, if that's what you want. I wish you and all beings in the big, wide universe the ability to have what we want and to realize our dreams, both to understand our dreams and to make our dreams become real, to realize our dreams within the boundaries of natural law, to wit, that may you have all that you want, which doesn't prevent others from having what they want. And so therefore the overlap of the Venn diagram is where, okay, we're in dispute about who gets what. You know, you want to play drum and bass at 2 a.m. and I want to sleep. And so we negotiate those things individually or through the courts or through law, English common law, great system. It would be a decentralized system again of like, the judge, you know, goes, well, similar situations, this was done and that was done, and goes, okay, what makes sense? Applying those principles here. If they make a bad decision, a superior court would cut it down, strike it down and say, no, that's better. But you have this decentralized system of negotiating our conflicts and where our free will overlaps disharmoniously, discordantly. But most of the time, you know, we're able to do whatever we want, and we can have our fun without depriving others of that ability. And it would be nice if certain of the more powerful members of our race were to become possessed of the desire to embody this more and more, and starting with ourselves, you know. But so may you have all that you want within reason, without preventing others from enjoying their freedom. And if you want money, whether for possessions or experiences or status or relationships or whatever, may you have it. But more importantly, may you have the consciousness of what you really want and what can get you what you want. And may you thereby live wisely and skillfully, enjoying your experience and being a positive influence on the world and improving the song of this orchestra, and contributing a fitting harmony. God bless everybody. Go make that money. $1 bills.